You are the king and this is your kingdom, this, that, and everything is under your control. Spending money is fun, but earning money is miserable. If you took the letters X, A, T and swapped the T in front of the X, then A in front of the X, you get the word tax. Hey, I'm tired of giving money to the king. Come on, king, leave us alone. Unfortunately, my small mega mansion needs to be extended. Instead of helping the people that were forced to help you, you would always buy stupidly expensive art pieces, and even worse, building castles beside your castles, planning to build more castles on top of the castles. The king was sitting on his throne, and beside him was his phone. Ring, 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 ring. Oh wait, they didn't have phones back then. Mr. King, we have no money. Have you checked the castle fund? That's why we have no money.
Raise the taxes.
Eventually, you don't wake up anymore. Yay! And someone takes your king spot, then all the money problems vanish because he wasn't an idiot and did proper king stuff. Now let's leave the palace, because kings occasionally have to go outside. Maybe you're visiting another kingdom, checking on your people, or you're just bored. Either way, you hop in your Ferrari. Well, close enough, you get a horse, which is basically a motorcycle if the motorcycle had feelings and pooped a lot. Fortunately, your kingdom is huge, but unfortunately, you have to travel out of it. A quick 3-hour drive becomes a 3-day journey, assuming it doesn't rain. Well, it rained. Congratulations. The road is now mud. It rained even more. The road has been promoted to a river. Eventually you arrive, everybody cheers because the king is here. Yay! Yeah! We love you, king! And definitely not because they were told to. You wave at the people wave back, then somebody hands you a list of problems. Dear king, the bridge is broken. The crops are dying. The neighboring kingdom is acting suspicious. Help us. And suddenly sitting in a palace all day doesn't sound so bad. Unfortunately, the bridge isn't your biggest problem. The crops are dying and that's bad because people enjoy food a lot. When the crops die, the people get hungry. When the people get hungry, they get angry. And when they get angry, they stop saying things like, yay, we love the king! And start saying things like, we hate the king, remove him from his position. Now, being the king in this exact positioning is extremely difficult because things get even worse.
A plague arrives.
Nobody knows where it came from, nobody knows how to stop it, and everybody suddenly becomes a doctor. I think it's the air. I think it's the water. I think it's an attack from the inside of the castle. Meanwhile, the king is expected to fix everything immediately. The entire kingdom looked at the king and said, no pressure. Sure, said the king that was pressed. So you start solving problems. You send workers to repair the bridge. You send food to the villages. You send doctors to the sick. And you send a strongly worded letter to the neighboring kingdom. We are watching you. We are also watching you. Stop that. Eventually, the crops begin growing again, the plague starts disappearing, and the people stop talking about replacing the king, which is great, because historically, replacing the king was not always a peaceful process. Maybe the king isn't so bad. Yeah, he's at least better than Greg II. Why am I still being involved in this? I'm 6 feet under the ground. And just like that, the kingdom survived another crisis. Congratulations! Now you can move on to a completely different crisis.
Also known as finding a wife. Can you marry for love? No. That's adorable. Marriage is more politics than a love ceremony. You marry someone because they bring land, money, soldiers, or one less country trying to kill you. Or they like someone else. Great. That's an affair. And depending on the kingdom, there might be concubines too. Which is basically palace romance, but everyone is watching. Also known as self-cut. Anyway, somehow it affects taxes and this thing called inheritance. If the king dies with no clear next king, the kingdom becomes kingless with a bunch of kingless people arguing over who should be the next king so they're no longer kingless. Now there's gossip, affairs, anger queens, jealous nobles, secret children no one knew existed. Oh no, it's a scandal. What does the king do? Does he apologize? No, he gets dressed to make a speech, to make sure everyone forgets he's been unfaithful. One thing about the clothes. You're king, so you're just comfy, right? Not really, because royal clothing is not made for comfort. It's made to tell everyone how much better you are than them, or something like that. You get robes, fur, silk, gold, jewels, and a shirt with buttons that were designed by your enemies. Then comes the crown. Praise the crown. Looks majestic, but feels like a golden dumbbell sitting on your head. And then the robe, huge, heavy, dragging behind you like a fancy carpet that won't let go. So now you're standing in a palace wearing 5 layers, sweating like a criminal, and dragging around a 15-pound glorified mop while everyone thinks you're the happiest man alive. That's called fashion. And it hurts. Anyway, you look amazing. You just can't breathe, walk, sit, bend, feel joy. You can't move, and that's a problem, because everyone wants your job, which is even a bigger problem. That raises another question in your head that's being crushed by a 5-pound hunk of very shiny and very expensive metal. Can you trust your family? No. Can you trust the guy who says, Your Majesty, I'm very loyal and I will never hurt you? That's the least loyal sentence ever created. That's like gaslighting 101. Being king is basically sitting on the world's most expensive chair while everyone thinks, what if my butt was in that chair? What if all that was my gold? What if I did the unthinkable thing that would surely get me what I want and more? I think it's called betrayal. Maybe it's your brother. Maybe it's your cousin. Maybe it's your best friend who's been best friending a little too hard. And then come assassinations, aka premeditated murder of people of importance. This is when you start noticing things. The servant is walking weird, the chef is smiling too much, the guard has been sharpening his sword for 7 minutes while staring directly at you. Now you're paranoid about everyone, and if enough nobles, generals, and angry rich people agree at the same time about the same topic with the same motive, it's called a coup. That's when everyone suddenly decides that you're not the king anymore, usually without asking. So the king almost gets assassinated. Bad day. He survives. The assassin? Not so much. So what do we do with him? Punishment. Back then, trials existed. Kind of. Sometimes there was evidence, sometimes there was witnesses, sometimes there was neither, and the king decides if he's guilty anyway. And now the guy that tried to betray the king to take over the throne and have a better life is now having the worst day of his life. If they needed information, they had torture methods, which were basically medieval interrogation, but evil. There was a rack where they stretched you apart, and then there was a wooden horse which sounds like a toy until you realize it was invented by a psychopath. Then there was the iron chair, which was not a chair. Then came public punishments, because the king wanted the whole kingdom to see what happens when you get too creative with treason. People got locked in stocks, yelled at, laughed at, and sometimes hit with old vegetables. Thank you for participating in the justice system. And if the crime was really bad, execution! Hangings, beheadings, burnings, and most were meant to be public, dramatic, morbid, and humiliating. Because justice back then was not always about fairness, it was about fear, control, and power. And then it ends, the crowd stops cheering, and the message has been sent. Do what the king says, or become afternoon entertainment. And the king? He doesn't stay there thinking about life. He just turns around and goes back to being rich, because this was not a tragedy to him. It was a Tuesday, a very normal Tuesday. And next on the schedule, new home shopping, or palace.
Welcome to your new palace, or home. I don't really know the difference. Well, a house is a house, and a palace is a house. But big. And only the king lives there, kind of. Also the queen, and the servants, and the nobles, and the princess, and the prince, and a million other people. Since you're now king, this is your new palace. At first glance, it's a dream come true. Huge rooms with huge ceilings. It even echoes. But then reality hits. There's too many people everywhere, at all times. Just walking from your room to the dining hall takes 10 minutes. Unless you have a hoverboard. Then it'll be more like 5 minutes. Wait, they don't even exist yet. You could copy Louis XIV and hire people to carry you from point A to point B. Time for bed, said the king. Knock knock. What now, said the king. We have a problem, said the random guy he's never met. I'll deal with it later. Just let me sleep. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. Okay, at least you own everything. Only issues that things get boring after the 1,000,000th time. If only I could hire some random guy to dress like a fool and do foolish stuff to make me laugh at him for being such a fool. You know what? That's a great idea. Let's call him the Jester. I'm bored of this fool. Execute him, said the king's left-hand man. I mean right-hand man, unless you're left-handed. You should just listen to music. Come on, you know you love music. Everyone loves music. So you hire a personal band. The music sucks, but it's the best you've got. Your army just enslaved 2 guys for saying you're ugly. A little extreme if you ask me. You being the king have 2 options. Be a kind and loving king of the people and let the 2 guys free. Or be the worst human of all time and abuse his power for his own pleasure and make the 2 guys fight to the death for his own entertainment. Most kings chose the second option. And so do you, unfortunately. The battle to the death. Remember, you're king, so you own everything. So that includes the forest and the animals in the forest. So now, take one of the most dangerous, epic, and adrenaline-pumping activities ever, and make it boring and lame. I'm talking about hunting. As king, danger's basically illegal, so your servants make everything safe, even hunting. You're practically playing life on easy mode. You have the best armor, best weapons, best horses, best pets, even best haircut, unless you're King Henry V. Being king also means you're physically incapable of losing, especially at betting. No one can win against you. If you lose, you win. If you win harder. And if someone points this out, execute him! Because no one holds the king accountable. All this hard work you put in makes you extremely hungry. Also, why not celebrate your existence because you're the king and you're amazing or whatever. Dinner time! Today's menu will be anything and everything except vegetables. And rocks, because who the hell even eats rocks? Only brokies eat that stuff. Have you ever wondered why kings have such long tables? Because for dinner they bring out 30 different options, all at once. The food looks incredible, like Michelin star level, but does it taste just as good? So you take the first bite and you realize, everything's salty. Also, the food is way too heavy. Your first instinct is to stop eating, but then you realize that not eating seems rude. So you eat and eat and eat and eat. Health update. You're used to the overly saltiness and heaviness of the food, but your body isn't ever going to get used to it. You have high blood pressure from all the salt, high cholesterol from all the meat. In other words, you feel extremely sick most of the time, and you hate it. But I have some good news. You're now overweight. Well, for today's standards, it's terrible news. But during this era, it was impressive. It was a sign of wealth, power, and success. But it definitely isn't a sign of good health. Slowly but surely, you're going to die. At least you're able to say you ate like a king. The sad thing is your life didn't end in an epic or patriotic way. You didn't die in battle, or fighting a lion to the death to save your village. You died from eating too much. What an embarrassing way to leave Earth. Since your death was so lame, your people felt bad and decided to copy the Egyptians and buried you with gold, and some gold, and more gold. And why not throw some gold in there? But some thieves later looted your coffin and took all your drip. Makes you realize being king isn't all that good after all. Goodbye.